The scent of artificial pine stung my nose as I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor of my parents' Portland living room. Shreds of wrapping paper clung to my pajama pants, red and green confetti of a holiday that had always belonged to someone else. Across the room, my younger sister Sloane twirled a gleaming set of keys around her manicured fingers, each spin catching the sparkle of Christmas tree lights. The bow-shaped shadow of triumph stretched across her face as she squealed, "A BMW. My own." Through the picture window, I saw it. A glossy white car in the driveway, wrapped in a ridiculous red bow so enormous it probably cost more than every gift I'd ever received in a decade. My father, Martin, grinned like he had just closed the deal of his life, while my mother, Diane, clutched her hands beneath her chin as if Sloane had just given birth to the Christ child himself. I swallowed hard, the air too thick to breathe. Meanwhile, in my lap, sat something that mocked me. A plastic piggy bank in the shape of a cartoon character I had outgrown before my adult teeth had even come in. The store tag was still attached, $19.99. Diane's voice was sugar-coated, too bright. "Open it, honey, there's something inside." With fingers that felt more like wood than flesh, I pulled out the stopper. 2 limp dollar bills fluttered into my palm. Martin clapped his hands, dismissive, as if he had solved a family crisis. "It's the start of your future home fund, Rowan. You've always been so responsible. Not like some people." He winked at Sloane, who feigned mock offense, then collapsed into giggles. The silence that followed was unbearable, stretching out like taffy pulled too thin. Diane broke it with practiced justification. "Sloane needs reliable transportation for her design clients. It's about image. You understand?" Sloane tossed her hair and plopped down next to me, her perfume wrapping around my throat like a chain. "Don't worry, sis. I'll drive you anywhere. Your Toyota's practically antique by now." She patted my knee with a gentleness that landed like a slap. I stared at the Toyota keys in my pocket. That car had carried me across 7 hours of icy mountain passes yesterday. I paid it off myself 3 years ago. It was worth more loyalty than any relationship in this house. My chest tightened. 34 years of memories aligned with sudden clarity. This wasn't new. This was the pattern. This morning, I'd carefully wrapped their presents. A leather briefcase for Martin that took 2 weeks of salary, the silver bracelet Diane had admired in a boutique, the professional camera lens Sloane had casually mentioned. I had rehearsed my announcement for the drive down from Seattle, senior structural engineer. I pictured their pride, imagined for once not being the responsible one in the background. I had whispered to myself at every rest stop, "Maybe this year will be different." But the piggy bank's hollow thud against the coffee table told me all I needed to know. "Excuse me," I murmured, rising. My voice belonged to someone else. "Bathroom." I walked slowly up the stairs, past the gallery of family photos where Sloane's face bloomed in every frame. Prom dress, soccer trophy, vacation in Maui. My own milestones shrunk into corners, barely visible. And then I noticed what wasn't there, a space on the wall where my college scholarship ceremony photo used to hang. The gold frame was gone, hook left bare, erased. My throat burned, and suddenly the tears I couldn't summon earlier pressed hot behind my eyes. I closed the bathroom door with a soft click and turned the lock. My reflection stared back at me, too composed, too empty. I pressed both palms to the cold counter and waited for the tears, but none came. Instead, a different sensation rose, like concrete poured inside my chest, hardening, pinning my ribs from the inside. I packed before dawn. Hands steady now. Not everything, only what mattered. Grandma Lita's faded stuffed bear, my college photo album. The small wooden box with my first blueprint. The gifts I had given them stayed behind. They had never been about gratitude anyway. At the kitchen counter, I placed my house key beside the coffee maker, the metal icy against my palm before I let it go. Through the window, I glimpsed the ridiculous bow still perched on the BMW, ridiculous and triumphant. They had made their choice. Now I was making mine. By the time I pulled onto the empty highway, streetlights blurred into halos. The dashboard clock glowed 3:42 a.m., Christmas morning. Snowflakes clung to my windshield as Bing Crosby crooned about white Christmases. I twisted the knob, silencing him. "Have yourself a merry little Christmas," I whispered to the empty passenger seat. My voice broke on the word merry. The irony tasted bitter as acid. The highway stretched before me in endless ribbons of gray, flanked by pine trees heavy with snow. My Toyota's heater groaned in protest, struggling against the December chill, but I didn't mind. The car had always been like me, overlooked, underestimated, but relentlessly dependable. Every mile I put between myself and my parents' house loosened the invisible leash they had wrapped around my neck since childhood. The phone buzzed on the console, screen lighting up with my mother's smiling contact photo. For a split second, a surge of instinct almost made me answer. Fear of missing something urgent. Fear of being the bad daughter. Then I read the text preview. "Did you remember to pay the cabin's electric bill before leaving Seattle?" My stomach dropped. Not a word about whether I was safe, not a plea to come home. Just the reminder of the weekend getaway cabin they'd bought for Sloane's Instagram photo shoots. Even on Christmas morning, my role was utility manager, not child. The buzzing continued, call after call, each one a tether trying to reel me back into the same cycle. Finally, I pressed and held my finger on the screen until the notifications vanished. Silence. The quiet was so absolute it felt holy. By dawn, exhaustion gnawed at me. I spotted a flickering neon sign through the fog, May's Diner, its parking lot dusted with fresh snow. I pulled in, the Toyota crunching over ice. Inside, the warmth hit me instantly. Bacon sizzling on a griddle, the hum of a jukebox. Coffee brewing so strong it might keep a corpse awake. A waitress with silver hair pulled into a messy bun appeared at my booth. Her name tag crooked. May. Without asking, she poured coffee into the chipped mug before me. Her eyes scanned my face with the accuracy of someone who'd been reading people her whole life. "Rough night? Rough life," I muttered, then immediately regretted the drama in my voice. But May didn't flinch. She slid the sugar jar across the table, her bangles clinking. "Honey, I've been serving coffee 40 years. I know heartbreak when I see it. Family or boyfriend?" "Family." The word cracked like glass in my throat. May gave a small nod. "Blood makes you related. Love and respect make you family. Don't confuse the two." Something in my chest shifted. Her words felt heavier than the coffee mug warming my hands. She poured again, leaning on the counter like a confidant. "You'd be surprised how many kids come through here with stories about those big red bow cars. Most of them aren't even owned. Just leases daddy can't afford, all for show. Image is cheap, debt is expensive." Her observation cut through me like lightning. Maybe the bow in my parents' driveway wasn't triumph. It was debt disguised as love. My coffee went bitter in my mouth. Before I could dwell, my phone buzzed again. This time, a name that softened everything inside me. Camila Ortiz. My college roommate. The only one who had seen behind my family's glossy facade. I answered, voice trembling. "Rowan? Where are you?" "Somewhere in southern Oregon, heading south." "Good. Come to San Francisco. Stay with me as long as you need. No debate." "I can't impose." "Stop." Her tone sharpened. "You've spent your whole life helping others. Let someone help you for once. Text me your location every hour. I'll make up the guest room." Her certainty left no room for argument. Tears finally threatened, but this time they weren't born of despair. They were relief. After hanging up, I noticed my college photo album poking out of my overnight bag. I opened it absent-mindedly, pages smelling faintly of dust and ink. A folded slip of paper fell out, wedged between the photos. My pulse quickened as I recognized Grandma Lita's handwriting. The note was brief but cryptic. "Rowan, you've always been my builder. When the time comes, open the blue envelope in my cedar chest. Remember, what's hidden is not always lost." I sat frozen, diner sounds fading. My grandmother had died years ago, but this felt like her reaching across time, whispering a truth my parents had buried. What blue envelope? And why hadn't I heard of it before? May returned with a plate heavy with eggs, hash browns, and extra bacon. On the house, she said, sliding it toward me. You look like you need strength more than change. I smiled weakly, grateful for the first act of uncalculated kindness I'd felt in days. By the time I left the diner, snowflakes dissolved against my windshield, and the horizon had lightened to pale gold. The Toyota hummed beneath me like a loyal companion. As Oregon's border signs loomed closer, I pressed harder on the gas. For the first time in my life, I wasn't driving toward family. I was driving toward freedom. San Francisco greeted me with salt air and the clang of cable cars. A city alive, in a way Portland had never been. Camilla's apartment in the Mission District became my landing pad. A modest space smelling faintly of sage and laundry detergent, with walls painted terracotta that warmed in the afternoon sun. For the first time in years, I slept without bracing for footsteps outside my bedroom door. On my second morning, I opened my laptop and stared at the blank email draft addressed to my firm's regional director. My cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Requesting transfer to the San Francisco office effective immediately. I'd rewritten the message 14 times, each version more cautious than the last. Finally, with Camilla's steady presence beside me, I hit send. The approval came 3 hours later, an anticlimactic ping that meant I had severed one more tie to Portland. Camilla wasted no time. You can't live out of a suitcase forever, she declared, dragging me to meet Andrea, a friend who managed apartments nearby. By sunset, I held keys to a rent-controlled studio with creaky hardwood floors and west-facing windows that caught the city's golden hour like a benediction. I bought only what I needed: a futon, a lamp, a small desk. The emptiness felt intentional, like leaving room for a life I hadn't yet built. Camilla also had other plans. Therapy, non-negotiable. The following Tuesday, I found myself in the book-lined office of Dr. Ilara Chen, a woman with calm eyes and the kind of silence that pulled words out of me like water from a well. I stumbled through my family's history. Sloan the golden child, me the responsible one, the endless cycle of dismissal. Dr. Chen leaned back, hands folded. Golden child and scapegoat. It's a common dynamic in narcissistic family systems. One child is idealized, the other burdened with responsibility. You were parentified, Rowan. Expected to carry more than was yours. The words hit like a gavel. Parentified. Scapegoat. They gave shape to wounds I had only ever felt as shadows. Her homework was deceptively simple. Say aloud what was true for you, not what they told you was true. That night, alone in my studio, I whispered into the empty room. I was worth more than $2. My needs mattered. Their favoritism wasn't love. Each sentence trembled, but they were mine. On Saturdays, Camilla refused to let me hide behind work. You need clay under your nails. Not just concrete calculations. She hauled me to a pottery class in a drafty community center where sunlight spilled across long tables. My instructor, a silver-haired woman in paint-splattered overalls, guided my shaking hands over the spinning wheel. Don't force it, she murmured. Listen to what it wants to become. My clay collapsed into lopsided walls, a crooked bowl that would never hold soup. But when I set it on the drying rack, I felt something I hadn't in years: ownership. Ugly or not, it was mine. Meanwhile, work offered its own crucible. My new team was struggling with the Richardson Tower retrofit, a seismic upgrade project complicated by hidden flaws in the original design. While reviewing the structural models late one night, I spotted a miscalculated shear wall placement that no one else had flagged. It was subtle, buried in the blueprints like a secret, but if left uncorrected, the building would crumble under stress. I documented it, submitted a solution, and braced for dismissal. Instead, the project lead called me into his office the next day. Good catch, Hale. You've got an eye for weak spots. For once, someone saw my vigilance as strength instead of obligation. But back in Portland, the old cycle tried to claw me back. Martin left a voicemail laced with authority. "If you don't return the Toyota immediately, I'll report it stolen. It's still family property." Fear froze me until Camilla dragged me to a legal aid clinic. A young attorney flipped through my car title and payment receipts. "The car is in your name. If your father files a false report, that's fraud. We'll send him a cease and desist." I left with a letter drafted on official letterhead, my name in bold ink above the words, "Owner of Record." Holding it felt like holding a shield. That night, I placed the letter on my desk, right beside Grandma Lita's cryptic note about the blue envelope in the cedar chest. The two pieces of paper stared back at me, one a weapon forged in law, the other a mystery buried in family history. For the first time, I wondered if the truth of my life was bigger than favoritism. Maybe there had always been evidence, waiting to surface. The weeks that followed in San Francisco moved in uneven rhythms: calm mornings of coffee by the window, frantic evenings of seismic modeling at the office, and then the relentless pulse of my phone lighting up with messages from Portland. The evolution of those messages told its own story. Week 1, confusion. "Rowan, we don't understand why you left. Call us." Week 2, concern. "Your mother hasn't slept. Your father is sick with worry." By week 3, manipulation arrived in full costume. Diane's voice dripped through voicemail like syrup hiding a knife. "The doctor says my blood pressure is dangerously high because of the stress you're causing. Is that what you want, Rowan? For me to end up in the hospital?" I pressed delete before she finished, though my thumb lingered a second longer than I wanted to admit. Then came the smear campaign. Old coworkers from Portland messaged me on LinkedIn, their words carefully coded. "Heard you were going through a hard time. Hope you're getting the help you need." Translation: my parents had been telling people I'd had a breakdown, that I was unstable, that I wasn't thinking straight. The narrative of the difficult child was alive and thriving without me to contest it. But San Francisco offered its own counter-narrative. At a Wednesday night support group in a church basement, I sat with 8 strangers, each of us clutching styrofoam cups of lukewarm coffee. Raymond, a 60-year-old accountant, said what I hadn't been able to articulate. "Love without respect isn't love, it's possession." His words lodged in my chest like steel rebar in concrete. For the first time, I believed what Dr. Chen had told me. My reactions were valid, but they didn't belong to my parents. They belonged to me. At work, I leaned into that clarity. My discovery of the Richardson Tower flaw had elevated me to acting lead on the retrofit. I spent late nights recalculating load paths and damping ratios, running my pen across paper until the numbers aligned like constellations. My team began to trust me, even depend on me. Not as the scapegoat holding everything together, but as a professional whose expertise had weight. Yet the ghosts of Portland still prowled. One Friday morning, my office phone lit up with the receptionist's alert. "A woman named Sloane Hale is here asking for you." My chest tightened. Before I could respond, Camilla appeared in the lobby. She'd dropped by to bring me lunch. Her voice was clipped steel when she told my sister, "She's in a meeting, indefinitely. For uninvited visitors." I watched from the stairwell as Sloane's face crumpled, half in shock, half in indignation. She left without seeing me. That night, I sat on my futon staring at the crooked pottery bowl drying on the sill. The old Rowan would have chased after her, demanded reconciliation, offered money, time, energy. The new Rowan stayed seated. My compassion no longer came packaged with rescue. 2 weeks later, news reached me through Camilla's grapevine. Sloane's BMW had been repossessed. The glossy bow had come undone, the symbol of my parents' favoritism yanked away in a tow truck's growl. Their obsession with appearances had finally met reality's teeth. I should have felt vindicated, but what I felt instead was unease. If the BMW was gone, then so was the illusion. And when illusions shatter, families like mine don't seek truth, they seek scapegoats. One night, while reorganizing the small desk in my apartment, I found Grandma Lita's note again. The ink had faded slightly, but the message struck me harder now. When the time comes, open the blue envelope in my cedar chest. My grandmother had always been the only one who seemed to see me. If she left a secret behind, maybe it was meant to balance the scales my parents had tilted. The thought anchored me. My parents might rewrite stories, might spread rumors, might repossess cars and twist truths. But there was something out there they couldn't control. Evidence. Proof. And I was determined to find it. The ivory envelope lay on my kitchen counter like a live grenade. I'd stared at it for 3 days before finally breaking the wax seal with trembling fingers. Natalia and Aaron invite you to celebrate their wedding. My cousin had always been the peacekeeper in the family, a soft voice amid louder storms. But even her neat calligraphy felt like a summons back into the lion's den. At therapy, Dr. Chen folded her hands. "You don't have to go, Rowan." "I know," I admitted. "But if I don't show up, they'll turn absence into more proof that I'm broken. If I do show up, I can choose how I enter." She nodded. "On your terms?" So I booked a Hilton room 4 blocks from the venue, ignoring Martin's voicemail insisting I stay at the family's rental house. The old Rowan would have caved, dragging her suitcase through the same hallways of expectation. The new Rowan understood that boundaries sometimes look like hotel receipts. Then an email came that shifted everything. Natalia had accidentally CC'd the entire family on the seating chart draft. My name sat neatly between Mom and Dad, directly across from Sloane. A manufactured tableau, as if they could stage manage reconciliation for the price of a catered dinner. I pressed reply before I could overthink. "Hi, Natalia. Would you mind moving me closer to the cousins' table? I'd love to catch up with them during dinner. No apology, no excuse. A quiet logistical rebellion. But the true twist arrived the next week. Camilla and I had driven up early, my stomach a knot of dread, when she tugged me off course. "We're making one stop," she said, handing me the directions to a storage unit on the outskirts of Portland. Inside, the dust smelled of cedar and mothballs. Against the back wall sat my grandmother's old chest, its brass hinges tarnished but solid. My breath caught. The blue envelope. I lifted the lid, and there it was, tucked beneath folded quilts. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were bank statements from an education trust my grandparents had established, explicitly marked for both granddaughters. The deposits were equal, the account healthy when I was 17. Then, a gap. Transfers in Sloane's name only. Entire years of tuition and art travel stipends funneled to her, while I worked 25 hours a week to cover textbooks. At the bottom, a handwritten note from Grandma Lita, her script uneven but forceful, split equally, or not at all. Remember, fairness is love in practice. The betrayal was colder than any winter night. They hadn't just favored Sloane, they had stolen what was mine. I slid the documents into a leather folio, alongside photographs of our uneven birthdays, tuition ledgers, even the receipt for my first student loan. The evidence wasn't for revenge, it was for clarity. Dr. Chen's words echoed. "The proof is for you, not to win them." Back in San Francisco, life pressed forward. At work, the Richardson Tower retrofit advanced. My correction of the shear wall flaw impressed leadership so deeply that my name would appear on the public permit set. My first permanent mark on the city skyline. For once, my value was measurable in steel and math, not in how well I carried someone else's burdens. But the wedding loomed, its shadow stretching across my days. Every voicemail from Martin, every text from Diane reminded me that they hadn't stopped trying to rewrite the narrative. "We're selling the house because of you. Sloane's struggling, because you abandoned us." I held the folio tighter. They had always weaponized words. This time, I had something they couldn't twist. Evidence carved in numbers and ink. The night before I was to fly to Portland, I stood by my apartment window, the Bay Bridge lights flickering like a heartbeat. For years, I had been their scapegoat, their silent ledger of sacrifice. But tomorrow, When I walked into that rehearsal dinner, I wouldn't be their burden. I would be their reckoning. The rehearsal dinner shimmered with candlelight and nervous chatter, but I felt every eye on me the moment I stepped through the door. My emerald blouse caught the glow, my heels announced each step, and for the first time in years I wasn't shrinking. My parents froze mid-conversation, Sloane's smile faltered, and cousins whispered in corners. I was no longer the daughter who had slipped away at Christmas. I was something unfamiliar, untouchable. Later, amid clinking glasses and murmured toasts, a message came. Your parents want to see you in the library. Urgent. I knew the trap before I even walked down the hall. The heavy oak door swung open to reveal Martin pacing, Diane perched primly with tissues already in hand, and Sloane at the window in a dress worth more than a month of my rent. A chair sat conspicuously across from them, positioned like a defendant's bench. Sit down, Rowan, Martin commanded, voice thick with authority. I closed the door behind me but stayed standing. I'll listen from here. Sloane was first. This has gone too far. Dad lost his job 3 months ago. Mom's seeing a therapist for depression. We're selling the house. Her tone implied it was my fault. Martin added, the company downsized. It's been brutal. Your mother's health has collapsed since you abandoned us. There it was. The trifecta. Financial crisis, health concerns, guilt. They always played the same hand, different suits. I moved calmly to the empty chair, not to sit in submission but to place my leather folio on the table. I'm sorry for your struggles, truly. But none of that started when I left. It started years ago. Martin's jaw tightened. We always supported you. I flipped open the folio, sliding the first photo across the polished wood. Sloane's princess birthday party with ponies and castles beside my own, 2 friends, a sheet cake, dollar store hats. Did you? Diane's lips parted, trembling. Things were tight then. Not according to these. I laid down bank statements from Grandma's trust, the one marked for both granddaughters. The trail showed tuition checks for Sloane, flights to Europe, art stipends, all while I carried $67,000 in student loans. Sloane's hand twitched toward the papers. That's not fair. You chose engineering. It was my passion, I said evenly. Just like art was yours. The difference is, my passion wasn't considered worth investing in. Diane stood abruptly, tears streaking her cheeks. But they were different this time. Less performance, more shock. We didn't mean to hurt you. Intent doesn't erase impact. My voice stayed calm, steadier than I'd ever heard it. Finally, I reached into the folio and withdrew the plastic piggy bank. Its hollow clunk on the table made Diane flinch. I pulled out the stopper. Dozens of crisp $2 bills spilled across the surface, bright green against mahogany. I've saved one for every week since Christmas, I said, not as punishment, as a reminder of what you thought I was worth. The room fell silent except for the flutter of paper. Sloane picked up a bill, turning it over slowly. I never realized how it looked from your side, she whispered. I never learned to stand on my own. They never taught me. For once there was no arrogance in her voice, just raw truth. I reached into the folio one last time and laid down a single page, typed, signed by Dr. Chen, stamped with her practice seal. Family contact agreement. It outlined the only conditions for reconciliation. Therapy with a licensed professional, respect for my boundaries, no financial coercion, no smear campaigns. Any violation and contact would cease. Martin's face darkened, his hand slamming against the table. This is absurd. Families don't need contracts. Families who respect each other don't, I replied. But this one does. He opened his mouth but Diane touched his arm, her voice hoarse. We'll do it, if that's what it takes. I gathered the folio and the piggy bank, but I left the $2 bills scattered like fallen leaves. Keep them. As a reminder of what favoritism costs. When I reached the door, Sloane's voice followed me, hushed but certain. She's different now. She was right. I didn't just walk out of that library. I walked out free. San Francisco's December sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors of my studio, turning the pottery bowls on the sill into tiny suns. A year ago, I had whispered Merry Christmas to an empty passenger seat, choking on bitterness. Now my table was surrounded by people who chose me. Camilla laughed as she poured wine. Coworkers swapped engineering jokes, and the scent of rosemary and sage rose from the oven. For once, the air didn't feel heavy with obligation. It felt alive with belonging. Jonah Park, an environmental engineer I'd met on the Richardson Tower retrofit, stood beside me at the counter. His fingers brushed mine as he took the carving knife. "Let me handle the turkey. You've done enough." His voice carried no condescension, just steady warmth. Months earlier, I would have refused out of reflex, convinced that accepting help meant weakness. But Dr. Chen's words echoed, "Receiving isn't failure, it's trust." "Actually, yes," I said, stepping back. The admission felt like loosening a knot I'd carried since childhood. Jonah smiled, not triumphant, just gentle. My phone buzzed on the counter, a scheduled video call. Monthly, structured on my terms. Sloane's face filled the screen. No BMW in the background now, just a cramped apartment. Second-hand furniture, dark circles under her eyes. "Merry Christmas," she said softly. "Your place looks beautiful." "It feels like home," I admitted, angling the camera to show the pottery shelf, bowls lined up like milestones. Her eyes glistened. "I made something for you." She held up a clay ornament, lopsided and cracked. Not pretty, but made with love. The old me would have offered money, bailed her out, tried to fix her life. The new me smiled. "It's perfect. Mail it, I'll hang it next year." Compassion without rescue. Another buzz, this time a message from Diane. A photo appeared. The childhood dollhouse I'd adored, freshly dusted with paperwork laid neatly beside it. "Found this while downsizing. It always belonged to you." My throat tightened. Beneath the dollhouse sat a deed transfer, my name in bold print. And then another. A snapshot of Martin, thinner, eyes clearer. The caption read, "90 days sober. He wanted you to know." I set the phone down slowly, heart caught between ache and cautious hope. For once, their actions spoke louder than their words. After dinner, laughter still echoing, I stood on my balcony. The bay stretched dark and glittering, bridges strung with light like constellations. Jonah draped a blanket over my shoulders, his warmth grounding me. "Deep thoughts?" he asked. "Just gratitude," I whispered. "And the realization that worth isn't something you earn by carrying everyone else. It's something you claim by refusing to accept less than you deserve." Through the window, I saw the piggy bank perched on my mantel. Not a wound anymore, but a reminder. Inside it, the $2 bills no longer marked weeks of survival. They marked weeks of freedom. This time, I wasn't leaving anyone's house in the middle of the night. I was exactly where I chose to be. Home, in every sense of the word,